Take 503.
Hopefully this is the one that gets to be put up. What is up, you guys? We are back trying to film episode, I don't even know.
This was supposed to be episode 3.
No, it's supposed to be 2. After the birth stories.
No, because we did mental health and then the birth. That's why we're like, fuck this, we're doing the birth stories.
So we've tried to film this mental health episode at least 10 times, like no joke. Yeah. We finally got it filmed last time I was here last month. And then fucking Spotify and Riverside were not communicating with that file. Michelle spent a couple hours editing it, doing all the clips, and then it just didn't go.
It's in the abyss somewhere. So.
It's somewhere on the cloud. Anyway, we are back. So welcome to another episode of Manas to Mamas. We are finally gonna hopefully film and get this episode up. If you are on our Spotify or YouTube, you will notice that we missed episode 8. We do know how to count. We do know where we were at. Episode 8 just did not want to load on either platform.
No, it's on YouTube, just not Spotify.
And then episode 9 loaded perfectly fine. So we do know how to count, though. We do realize that if you're going through and you're like, where the f*** is episode 8?
7, 8, 9. So
yeah,
7, 9 on Spotify.
Yeah, 8 is gone. I mean, maybe, who knows? Maybe like it'll magically come. Like just how it magically wouldn't load, maybe it will.
But if you're interested in anything hospital bags, then I know it might be a little more inconvenient on YouTube because you can't really maneuver out of it and like be on your phone. But
well, now you can. It'll become a little window with the new update. At least on the iPhone. I don't know about Android.
Well, just catch it on YouTube if you are our Spotify listeners. But from what we uploaded last, I think we're back to normal.
So this is we're going to go with it's episode 10. Yay, we've made it to 10.
Double digits.
I mean, although we filmed this 10 times.
It'll be the 10th.
Hopefully this is the one that loads. But anyway, that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump right into episode 10. Mental health just should not be taboo.
No.
I mean, it's literally stressing us the fuck out because it won't go up, but that's life. Like, I don't even know. What a better episode to cause this much ruckus. So we're going to go ahead and do the trigger warning. Like, we've filmed this trigger warning 15 times. If we seem kind of like we're rushing through it or kind of annoyed, it's because we literally have repeated the same episode
too many times
to count. Mm-hmm. So, trigger warning, we're going to talk about some very heavy shit on this episode, some very real shit, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum rage, the circling the thought of death, the imagery of seeing a dead baby. It's hard. So if this episode is not for you, we get it. Go see episode 9 because that one does exist. Or if you're on YouTube, go look at like 8, the hospital bag one. That one's always fun.
That one, yeah.
But we understand if you can't sit and hear or watch this one, and we still love you.
Yeah, just catch another one.
Yeah. Okay. So, as we've mentioned in our past, like I think the birth story, we talked a little bit about mental health, and I think we've talked about it at least a little bit in every episode, and kind of like, oh, it's coming. It's here. Well, it's here. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I suggest that you go look back at the birth stories, because that'll kind of open up everything for like where we're going to pick up on.
Yeah.
For example, Michelle, at what point did you realize it was more than just baby blues?
I think for me, definitely the bickering with my husband.
Was that after number 1 or number 2?
After Leonel, is when like the rage really, really kicked in, because if you guys know us, we're just very chill, laid back,
really like people, unless you fuck with them.
Yeah, like if you don't want to do something great, chances are I don't want to clean up either. Like,
it'll get done when they get
it done. It does, and between the two of us, he's the cleaner one. He's the one who kind of works backwards. For me, I'm like, let me feel like I want to clean, and then I'll do it. And Michael's like, I can't chill until it's clean. And
that's kind of how he de-stresses, I think.
Yeah, like that's just him. So usually when he doesn't want to clean, I'm like, all right, cool, like no problem. But then I started noticing that it would be like, oh, well, I don't want to wash the dishes right now. Let me just go be with the baby. And I'd be like, wait, you don't want to clean the dish? Like, why?
Was it more so because you were thinking, like, now it's something else I have to clean later?
Not necessarily, just the fact of like, oh, now you want to chew?
Oh,
like,
now.
Yeah, like, I don't know. It's just the way my brain was just like programmed. Because honestly, if we didn't clean after dinner, like, it's never has been a problem. But I knew it was something more when he was going through like his gaming phase, and the baby was like not even putting like a ruckus, because he would just play in the room with him, but the baby just did not want to be playing. And I don't even know why the baby started crying, and he was like into his game. And I remember like telling him like, dude, can you just stop playing for like a little bit? And he's like, yeah, like, not paying attention, gaming. Like, if your partner's game, you understand.
I mean, he had
like,
the whole like
everything, the whole setup, like with all my compadres, like it was just their little thing, And I just remember
it was like COVID times that they started.
Yeah, so I just like grabbed the kitchen chair and I really wanted to just like pick it up and toss it to him.
We are not condoning violence.
No, at
We're
all.
not saying that it's okay to have these feelings.
No,
it is just that's when she realized that those feelings were not acceptable.
Yeah, so. I was like, because for the most part, every time I would feel kind of like agitated or angry or frustrated, mainly and only with him, my partner, that's when I was like, oh, well, they say babies kind of
test
waters, and like that's normal. And I kept telling myself that it was normal until that moment. I was like, you know what, like.
And Michelle's not a violent person, like, not at all.
Never gotten into a fight in my life.
Yeah, she's not. Even when we were little, like, Alyssa would be a bully to her. She's like, no, I don't want to hit her.
Like, just,
So for her to have these feelings, that's when she realized, like, okay, oh, shit.
It's a lot. And then, I got the help, called, did that questionnaire, and I was like, well, I don't feel these symptoms toward, like, the question. If you've taken it,
if you've had a child or had a late term miscarriage or stillbirth, they make you do these like it's like 10 questions.
Yeah, and so
they're all targeted at like depression.
Yeah, everything is like, have you felt like have you been able to laugh in the last week, or whatever time frame?
Have you felt down?
Most days, some days, never. Or like one more. There's like another option. And you're just supposed to, they read it down and you answer. And then if you trigger something, then they kind of
then they like score it. And then if you're at a certain amount, you're fine.
It's just baby blues. Yeah. Like, you're fine.
The screening process is a complete fucking joke.
Yeah.
I'm going to just say it.
It really is.
It's a fucking joke.
Because it's like, when have you been yourself? Have you found something that you're passionate about in the last week? And it's like,
have these feelings made it hard for you to leave the house?
Like,
I have a fucking newborn. He makes it hard to leave the house. Like,
so yeah, it wasn't until like after the question, she's like, okay, well, you look fine. 6 weeks, mind you, my 6-week appointment was on the phone. So they're like, you're cleared to all activities. Just listen to your body, and we're here if you need us. And I'm like, well, actually, on that questionnaire, like, it said this and this about like depression, sadness, and they used another word.
Loneliness, I think.
Is it loneliness? I forgot what the word was, and I was like, well,
if you know, screening.
Yeah, questions. And I was like, if you replace that word with like anger, frustration, irritability, like, that's what I feel, but I don't feel it towards like any symptoms of depression. And then that's when, like, it triggered her to ask. And she's like, okay, well, you're going through a little bit of postpartum rage. Like, let's just journal. And now that you're cleared to work out, like...
Which is normal. So if it's normal, why the fuck don't we talk about it?
Yeah, like, I didn't know about postpartum rage until the doctor was like...
She was the first one that
said... after the fact. Yeah, after, because...
You don't talk about that shit. Yeah. It's taboo. I mean, I'm very open about my mental health. Yes, I've been in therapy fucking 6 years. Mm-hmm. Yes, I've taken medication, but that some people like me, I just don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And Michelle's a little bit more personal about certain things like that. And that's totally fine. No way is better than the other.
Yeah, it's whatever you need.
Because she didn't even tell us right away that she was going through postpartum rage.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't have it towards anyone else except her husband.
Yeah, and literally it was like, I would feel these big emotions where I was like, I want to throw a chair at you. I want to yell at you. Like, and if you guys know us, like, we don't bicker in front of people. I can't remember the last fight we had as a married couple, let alone like as a couple in almost like 11 years. So like to have like a big fight, I honestly can't remember. So the fact that it was like gallitos de pelea, like I would literally follow him around the house, like trying to get a reaction so that I would have.
I know, you know, my cuñado, he's kind of like, okay, all right, bro.
Yeah, like
he probably realized something was off too, so he didn't probably like jump right on and fight back. Not fight, but like give in to the argument.
Yeah, so he was like, you know what? I think this is like. Once I sat down and I told him, like, you know, I think this is bigger than I am. He was like, maybe we should, like, at your appointment, you should bring it up. And you know, I was like, okay, I should. And then again, like, oh, well, this is normal. And I'm like, how is this normal? But I've never heard about it. And then, welcome to America's healthcare system. After that appointment, never heard from anyone. No one ever reached out to me.
No one checked in.
No one ever called saying, hey, you got diagnosed. Like, how are you? And so I went about my day, like, well, I got cleared. Maybe I should journal. I should, like, work out. I could go on walks now. I can.
At that point, the baby was starting to, like, crawl and walk a little bit.
And so I was like, all right, cool. And then we ended up, like, moving.
Got pregnant again.
And so, yeah, it was just, like, boom, you know? And then I forgot about it. I was like, well, I'm not postpartum anymore. Now I'm prepartum. Like, I think I'll be fine. And with Diego, it wasn't well into almost like a year in. Feelings of just overwhelming, just irritability. And like, I just felt defeated all the time. Like, no matter what I did, I felt like I was just like lacking. Like, I'm not enough. Yeah, like I could be cleaning the house. Like, why does Michael get home and there's like a mess? The kids, like.
Well, then, you know, we talked a little bit about this on a previous mental health episode. Then you throw in the social media aspect and you're like, well, wait, she has one baby and she can do it. Or they have 5 kids, how do they do it? Or like you said before when we filmed this, like with After Leo, you're like, oh, that person has a baby. They get full on glam. So I have to, that's that standard that she was putting on herself. Yeah. Like, Cuñado was not, he was like, no, girl, you do you. If you want to be an awful, don't guys still love you.
Yeah, like you have a baby.
But you know, you kind of, I think a lot of it also, it's probably more common now because there's so much on social media. There's so much easily accessible, so much imagery of perfect postpartum, perfect houses, clean houses.
And it's one thing growing up, we never were that personable, like online. Like I never tapped into someone's life at the depth that we have allowed through social media.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, but it's giving...
not like false advertising, but like it's just expectation.
Yeah, because it's one thing to hear, like, growing up, I only heard positives about motherhood. Oh, there's no love like the love you have
like,
for your baby.
you know, it's a little hard when they sleep, but no,
it makes it worth it because all the love.
You get the cuddles at 2 a.m. Like, girl, I got a crying, screaming baby at 2 a.m. You don't want to cuddle with me.
Yeah, like you get all that pushed aside because es el amor de tu vida. Like,
and I think culturally too, you don't talk like Mexican people. Like when I tell my grandma, oh, like when they were with me, I have to go to therapy. She's like, oh, for your shoulder? No, grandma, for my head. Like mental therapy. She's like, oh okay. Yes. Yeah, you know, and I still get a little. I mean, she don't tell me shit.
Not really.
Yeah, she did whatever. But anyway, I think culturally it's even harder, right? Because, well, you can't complain because you're stay-at-home mom. You can't complain because, you know, you get to be around the kids all the time. People would kill to be able to have kids.
Have to leave their baby.
People would kill to not have to go to work. Like, it's just constantly. Or my favorite, pues en el rancho sí se hacía.
We had 15 and look at me, I'm okay. And I'm like,
y él trabajaba todo el día en el field y yo, well, that's good for you, girl, but...
Or when they're like, well, if you're tired, imagine how tired they are.
They were.
They'd leave the house and it's like, I understand, but what about me?
Yeah, like being a stay-at-home mom is a whole, like, there's that thing that says the average stay-at-home mom works between like 6:30 in the morning to like 8:15 at night.
Mm-hmm.
And they did the math, and that comes out to like 90 plus hours a week. That's 2.5 full-time jobs, not including them waking up in the middle of the night or the weekend, right? Because it
like
never stops. Or when they're sick, and it's like, yeah, I'm not doing anything. And I recently went back to work, but I hated hearing the like, what do you do all day? I mean, how hard can it be? You have no fucking idea how hard it is. And then throw in the hormone shifts, and then like you said, Leo was a couple months old, and you got pregnant again, so your hormones never even rebalanced before they had to throw in some more.
He was 4 months when we found out we were pregnant. So literally like 3 months postpartum, and then it's like, okay, you're not postpartum anymore. Actually, we're growing a child again. So
it's just a lot. It's a lot, and unfortunately, not only is it taboo to talk about, but the healthcare system, the mental health care system, is a fucking joke.
Yeah, because even like,
well, even most recently, how long did it take you to actually see someone?
Yeah, because so with the second one, again, I kind of kept shoving it off. Like, what's just the like stress of 2 babies, like lack of sleep with 2 babies, like all the changes that happen in our lives. Like, I kept just brushing it aside. This is just more than I am. So I remember with like insurance changes,
they had moved, so the insurance had to change.
It was just a big old disaster. So finally, I get it to almost a year after the baby's born. We situate everything. I call them, and I'm like, hey, I need to make an appointment with my PCP just to see what they had. And it was like 3 months out. And so then I was like, okay, give me that appointment. And then I got like paperwork saying like, if it's anything to do with like mental health, just tell them, because then that makes you kind of go in sooner. So then I ended up, instead of the 3 months, I ended up going in 2 weeks. And then after that, no, it wasn't 2 weeks.
No, it was still like a month.
And
then they called you to check in, and they're like, why didn't you call sooner?
Yeah, so I get to because every insurance card on the back side has like the customer service number, the behavioral health hotline, and then like call 911 if it's an emergency. And I would see the card, and I was like, well,
that mom guilt.
Like, I don't want to take up that call from someone who has it more severe than I am. Like, I know, and I accept the fact that mentally I'm not okay, but I'm not to a point where I want to harm myself or harm others. So I don't want to take that call, and then someone who needs it more than I am gets booted out of the queue because I took that spot.
Which is not how it works, by the way.
So I just kept like, I don't want to call. Get to my doctor's office, and they're like, okay, we can talk about and give you everything else for all the other checkups, but for you to start therapy, you have to call that hotline number. So I'm like, are you kidding
so then she was even more mad at herself and like frustrated.
I just wasted a whole year when all I could have done was literally like call. And when I tell you that within 10 minutes, I had not only called the hotline, gotten my referral approved, but had already scheduled my therapy.
And it was going to be like the next week, no?
Yeah, like within 8 days was my appointment, and I had already appointments scheduled like once a week for I don't know how many months. And I'm like, I could have been getting help so much. Like, why?
And she didn't really say anything until she was already living in this house. And I remember one day I called her like at 6:30 in the morning, 7:30 in the morning. And she was brushing her teeth in the bathroom, and I'm like, hey sister, like, how's it going? Which is how we started every phone call. And she closed the bathroom door because the boys were playing, and she just starts bawling. And I'm like, what is wrong?
And not like just like crying.
She couldn't even talk like that, like, yeah, like not sufrimiento, sentimiento, like catching her breath, and I was like, oh, and mind you, I talked to her every single fucking day.
Multiple times
a day, and you just never know what someone's going through. So from that moment on, I was like, all right, something is really, like, it's bad. If she's breaking down when I just say, good morning, how's it going? And that's what she was explaining to me, like, it's just so hard to get an appointment. I'm like, just call the number on the back. She's like, I know, I did that finally, but I had to wait a year. And I was like
I
it's
shot
okay.
myself in the
Like,
foot.
you know, and that's why we want to just highlight that mental health is taboo, but it shouldn't be.
Mm-mm.
Right? Check in on that new mama. Check in on the mama that has a toddler. Like,
just check in because honestly, like, I don't even know how many times I've mentioned this story, but a simple "How are you?" can make or break your day. Even if you're not a mom, as a regular person, like, I think it just hits home when you are a mom and, like, I don't know, being a stay-at-home mom, like, if someone would have told me 5 years ago, like, that's what I would have been doing with my life, I would have cackled in their face. Like, what? Me? Absolutely not. And now I'm like, I applaud all the moms who have to go to work. Like, I can't imagine how they do that because I'm like, my babies, like I live, breathe, am for them. And I know that I got completely lost into motherhood. And that really made me spiral in ways like I never even imagined. Because even prior to motherhood, like,
we were always raised like nobody's got you the way you got you.
Yeah,
like,
and so
it wasn't it wasn't a are you going to go to college and get a career? It was where are you going to go and what are you going to do? It wasn't an option. It was like an automatic thing.
Yeah.
Got out of college, all right, like we got good jobs. And my good job ended up taking me 500 miles away, but it wasn't like I didn't hesitate because I wasn't going to find a comparable option here. You guys commuted from San Jacinto down near to fucking Arcadia. Like,
it was just
it's what you do because you need to make sure that you got you because not anyone can walk away from you at any moment.
And I know it's very, like, morbid to think about, but I think it's just the way
our experience.
Like, that's how we were raised even prior, and then with our experience of just, like, how shit hit the fan, like, no one's got you but you. And so for me, it was always that sense of, like, I have to work 3 jobs because I'm not my parents' responsibility anymore. Like, I was always go, 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 go. And then to go from that to, like, your own.
And I mean, before Michelle got pregnant and while she was pregnant, probably up until you stopped working completely, she was in the medical field. Like, I was initially wanting to be a doctor, but I was like, you know what? I don't have the desire to learn organic chemistry. So bye. And then she's like, well, then I'm going to be the doctor, right? So you were already in the medical field. She was already like, doing all of that stuff in preparation to work under a doctor, like to, be a PA and stuff like that. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I'm not working anymore because it's COVID and I can't go in. Because you got pregnant at the beginning of COVID.
Yeah. And so even then, like, the mom guilt, like, I'm seeing all these patients. Is that safe for me? Like, every day it was like, well, this doctor got exposed because this nurse got exposed. And so,
was it a patient? Was it from home? I mean, you went, and then all of a sudden it was like, I'm staying at home. Yeah. For good. Until the kids get older.
Yeah. So I was it was a lot different for me. And so, yeah,
and like our mom was not a stay-at-home mom. No. So we don't know. I guess we also didn't know what it was like to be a stay-at-home mom.
Because my mom always worked.
My mom still works.
She, luckily, her village, like, we always had someone at home taking care of us. And so when I went, it was just like, okay, hello, is anybody here? Because then after shortly, even Michael went back to teaching in person. So,
and you were on the boondocks.
So it was like an hour and a half drive for him, give or take. And so for the most part, most of my day I was like by myself. And
her in-laws live like a couple houses down.
Yeah.
But they worked. They all worked. And then a lot of them worked still on this side of town. So they were like an hour.
Yeah. So it's not like, it's easy to say like, oh, but you have people. It's like, yeah, but on Tuesday at 10 in the morning, everybody's working. So who am I going to like talk to? So I remember when Michael was getting everything to go back to student teaching or teaching in person. He taught at a high school that we went to, And so all of his new like or now colleagues were like teachers of ours. So they
It took
were
us
like,
a long time to not call them Mr. and Miss.
yeah, whatever. And he'd be like, oh, like Julie, and I'm like, no, that don't call her by the first name. Like that's weird. But we had teachers who came, and Miss Hinton and Miss Rendon who came, and they were like, we just want to see that from afar, just to see how the baby is. And so I remember being in the parking lot in Pomona High, and Miss Hinton, I like pick him up, and she's like, oh my god, he's so handsome, like kisses, I gotta go, whatever. They go, and then Miss Rendon is there, and it's
Diana.
Miss Rendon, she's there in the parking lot, and Leo's kind of just playing with his toys, and she looks at me, and she's like, how are you, mija? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, we're doing good. But, he's breastfeeding, and automatic
Baby-
mom
baby
vomit,
vomit.
like the baby, us, the baby. And she's like nodding her head, she laughs, and she's like, no, mija, how are you?
She also was our English teacher.
Yeah.
She is an English teacher. So she's very much of like, you answer the prompt, you answer the question.
How the answer, And so she's like, no, how are you? ¿Cómo estás tú? How is Michelle doing? And I'm in the back of my Kia, and I'm just like frozen, like
flabbergasted that someone would even ask.
Like that SpongeBob episode when they're like looking for the file in his brain. I didn't know what to say. I was like, no one up until this point has asked me how I was. It was always like, how are you, mija? And then again, I would answer, oh, we're fine. The baby's here sleeping. And then it was again, Leo. And so I was just like in the parking lot, and
she didn't know how to answer.
I didn't know how to answer. All I could do, my response was just cry. And I didn't know why I was crying, but I was like, no one has cared enough to push away my answers about Leo to like.
No one has not necessarily cared. No one has paid that much attention
to really know how I'm doing as a mom. And I remember she just said, like, I love hearing about him, but just make sure that you acknowledge how you feel. How are you?
Diana's just amazing. She's just
And so after that, like, I've always been very pro mom, because I would always see, like, I was everyone to the baby, la mamá que, and yeah. And so after that interaction with Miss Rendon, like, I always took it upon myself to just ask, how are you? Because it really, like, that day made me really open my eyes to, like, people say they care about you, but no one
no one insists to find out because they're just so focused on this new beautiful little human that you have. And it's like the title, not the title of you, but the title of mom, but not the hype, the excitement of the baby, and like, especially when it's the first one, it's very easy for them just to focus, and it's not intentional. Like, it's not like they're like, oh, well, fuck you, but it kind of feels like that when you think about, like, when you look back and think about it, like, the baby gets a whole shower, the baby gets checked on, even the doctor, the baby gets seen. When you go to the first, when you go to the first appointment, they're already scheduling the next 3 appointments, but we don't get seen for 6 weeks,
and then it's like,
bye.
So I think it's just that sense of like, make sure that you are asking yourself honestly, because even for me, it's so easy to say, like, I'm good.
Sometimes, and after that phone call, she'll be like, oh, we're good. And I said, no. How are you? Oh, I'm good. Are you sure? Oh, well, no. The boy's this and the boy's that. And I cleaning. And I'm like, okay, that's the answer that I want. Like, now I know that I sometimes just can't ask her, how are you? Like, I have to kind of dig for her to really, like, it is not that she's not forthcoming. It's just that when you ask her, how are you? Her first thing is she's a mom. So let me answer in that order.
Yeah.
Right? Like, mom, how are you? Oh, the boys are good. I did this, I did that. We're doing this. We're going here. They ate this, or they didn't sleep. They did sleep. They whatever. And it's like, all right, cool. But how are you? Even right now, like with your back blown, I want to let you bleed your back out.
I pulled my back out, picking up a dirty diaper.
So I was checking in on her. I was like, how are you? She's like, oh, the boys are fine. Good. The boys can't do this. They want this. And I'm like, okay, but How okay? So then the question changed to how's your back? How are you dealing with your back? And sometimes for her to like put that trigger to answer on how she's doing as an individual, I sometimes do have to reword my question because how are you? It's how's mom Michelle? How is my sister Michelle?
I think it just comes with the territory of like stay at home mom life. You know, you even when I'm not feeling my best, it's like even when I blew my back out, it still took me like an hour or two to like message like
Us.
my mom and Michael. Because again, I'm like, no, I don't want to bother them, and they gotta take time out of their day. Like,
and mind you, that she didn't just blow her back out. She was like, she said she was the hunchback of Notre Dame with
like I literally just got stuck, you know. And I'm like, it'll be fine. Like I could just stretch this out, and I'll be good.
But you know what? This is the second time that you blew your back out. You blew your back out similarly on the floor with Simba, and Leo was a baby sleeping in the playpen
on the floor,
and your phone wasn't there.
So it's like, I kind of know how it goes. Like, I'll be back to normal. But the same, like, your brain is just like, if I called Michael or my mom, then I still have to wait for them. Estorbo. Yeah, like, they have to tell their bosses that they got to leave. Then they still got to drive to me. And then, like, for what? I'm not even going to go to the ER. Because, like, I've worked for a back doctor. Like, I know
what the signs
it kind of just, like, I shoot myself in the foot from like how much I know,
but or how much you think you know.
Yeah, so it's just like the same. Why am I gonna bother them when I'm fine? Like tomorrow I wake up, and so the same. Like everything I do is always around them, and now it's like okay, you do exist outside of just mom Michelle, and like if you aren't 100%, then like.
You can't give 100%.
Like my therapist would always say, like you can't fill from an empty cup as much as your brain tries to tell you that you have one drop left, and like I have an empty cup, but I'm still gonna fill it. Your brain tells you like there's still something to give, when in reality, like
you're maxed out.
You can't. You can't. And as long as their basic needs are met, it's okay for you to take some time.
Well, like you said, luckily the fridge was unlocked. She couldn't even like go to the fridge, and the kids wanted stuff, and she's like, "Okay, Leo, go ahead and get it." She was stuck on the counter. Just, I mean, this is how I wasn't here, right? But I imagined her just like hunched over the counter, like, "Okay, yeah, go ahead, yeah, go ahead, cause a ruckus, yeah, go ahead and eat that, yeah." Was she gonna say no?
Like, yeah.
And then the worst part is, even though she had her phone. It's not like I could DoorDash because who's going to open the door?
Yeah, so...
It's not like I can Instacart and I'm 500 miles away. I mean, and I was back at work already. I was like, dude, if you need me, like, I just went back to work, but I'll call off and I could fly down. She's like, it's fine. Her village came through, her mother-in-law and my mom. Luckily, we're able to. Which
even then, I was like, I'll be fine tomorrow. And they're like, no, we're taking the kids. Like, you rest. We'll figure it out, but it's fine.
I think that's also the nice part, sidetrack, of your situation. The fact that, like, my mom and Doña Porfi, like, first off, live within a couple miles of each other. But they also communicate outside of you.
Yeah.
You know, like, I wouldn't say that I'm saying, like, BFFs, but they are friendly and, they have that relationship and they understand that it takes a village. Like, I think they really understand that it takes a village, especially for someone like you that works, like, that is a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
They understand that you need breaks, that you need time, that your back is blown. And even though she says it'll be fine, they're like, absolutely not.
Which I think is like the biggest thing, because once again, like my village is amazing, and I have a husband who understands that, like, if I am bickering or if I am like sleeping too much or not in the mood, like he recognizes it. He's aware.
He's aware. He's hyper aware of you and your needs, even if you don't say them.
And, unfortunately, there are people out there whose partners, whose family, whose close friends, like, think it's taboo, and they're like, well, you're just being lazy, And for me,
it's you're tired because the kids kept you up. Like,
and that was my big trigger for Diego, was seeing Michael leave the house for work. Like, my heart knew, my brain knew that like him leaving means he's providing for our family. Him leaving to work and doing what he does gives me the opportunity to stay home and raise my babies. You know, if he didn't do that in the job that he had, then like we were fortunate to be able to have that choice, right?
I didn't have to. That you had to.
Yeah, like I didn't have.
Your sacrifice was him going.
Yeah.
His sacrifice was leaving.
And so I would see him every morning, like leave the house, or like even the ring if I was asleep, like 25 minutes ago, someone is at the door, and I would be like, oh, like I would be so mad, so like when I say pissed, like seeing him on the ring, like in his
little suit
uniform, yeah, like and just leaving. I was like, I would see it as you get to leave the house, like you get that break. You get that break to go interact with adults. Like my adult conversations are all via phone, and as much as like the talking on phone is great, like sometimes you just need,
or I think even just like the getting up and getting dressed and getting out of the house.
Yeah, like you get to just do that. And I get like I have to stay here, you know? And come the weekend it was always like, oh well, I'm always at work, let's just stay here. And I'd be like, more staying at home, like let's just go out, you know?
Just go walk at Costco.
And it got to the point where I was like, no, I don't want to stay home. Like, what if I told you I want to just go chill at Pomona High on Saturday and Sunday? Like, that's what I want to do. And he's like, why would I go back there? You know? And I'm like, that's exactly how I feel.
I mean, so, people don't seem to associate being a stay-at-home mom with working.
Mm-hmm.
But being a stay-at-home mom is work.
Because it's like
you don't get to leave.
Because you pay, you know, if I send my baby to a daycare, you pay thousands of dollars a month.
So I went back to work. Our daycare bill is about $2,000 a month.
So how is it that like I, as a stay-at-home mom, I get nothing, right? No one pays me. But if Julie sends her baby to daycare
for a couple hours, right? I mean, he goes somewhere in a couple hours, but they get to go clock out. He gets picked up and they get to go home. But like her workspace is her momming space, is her living space. It's her outlet space. It's her podcast studio.
And I think it's, for me, it was always this, like, I knew mental health was a thing because I have a lot of women who advocate for it. We have Krista, we have Julie, we have people who openly talk about that. And, you know.
And Michelle's educated. She knows about stuff, but even it took her a minute to be like,
is this really what I'm feeling? Because everything is so like, oh, it's normal until you're so far gone. And they're like, well, why didn't you tell us? And it's like, I've been telling you.
And unfortunately, the healthcare system sucks. The mental health system,
even worse.
Like sometimes they're like, oh, the next appointment isn't for 6 months. Well, I mean, this is going to sound really bad, but I could be dead in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So why do I have to wait 6 months to talk to someone?
And then the same thing, like,
and then the person dies or commits suicide or, you know, goes on a murder spree. Oh, well, I wish they would have said something.
It's like we aren't given that support. And before, and then when you try to reach out, it's kind of like you kind of hit dead ends.
So I think one thing that we've done, especially a lot of our friends and cousins and, you know, younger, like Diana, you know, not the younger generation, but just people that we grew up with that are now moms are experiencing a great change. We make it a point to be like, how are you? You know, even if that's like, I'm going to just DoorDash you a coffee and breakfast, or you know what, you posted and it's not that we're like super BFFs with them. It's just like, we've been there.
Yeah. Cause even like my sister-in-law's best friend, she just had a baby not like a couple months ago, and she lives like 15 minutes from our house. And the same, I messaged her like, whenever you need someone to drop up a coffee, anything that you need, like I'm usually home, just message me. And I wish someone would have messaged me that.
Yeah.
You know, even if she never messages me, like,
just the offering.
Hey, like, can you bring me this? Like, because once again, like me and Emily aren't that close, but the fact that she knows that even though we're not close, like as moms, I got you.
There's a different bond that you have with someone when you not to have a mom. Especially because, I mean, we had it pretty easy, but it was still rough.
Yeah.
You know, we had it pretty easy in the aspect of we were supported with our partners, most importantly, because not everyone has that. You know, and then you throw in the rest of our village that support in whatever way they can. Not everyone has that. So I would say we had it pretty easy in that aspect. But some people, like Michelle said, are like, they don't have that. They're by themselves. So if you know a mom, even if she says, yeah, I'm good, like, dig a little deeper sometimes.
And sometimes it's,
and sometimes they're not going to want to talk about it because it's a shame. Like, they're ashamed to feel like that's what I struggled with. Like, I was ashamed that I needed a minute because why do I need a minute if this is everything that I never knew I wanted, but I have. You know, people struggle to have babies, so why am I feeling anxiety and depressed and rage and why not like what was me, but like shame on me. That's how I think felt. It was like shame on me for feeling these things because someone has it worse. Yeah. You know?
I think you just back to comparing. Like, you just compare yourself to them. And like, well, I see this person doing it just fine. How can I?
By themselves,
you know? Like, for me, that Vivi was my comparison. Like, why does she get to, like, not get to, but she's so calm with Sebas. Like, she doesn't get irritated with him. Like,
if you know Vivi, she'll be on an episode pretty soon. She's easygoing, she's just mellow.
She's Vivi, you know. And I would always like look at her and I would admire her, like
her patience.
Wow, like, you know, she just he cries and he fusses and she's just like go with the
doesn't
flow.
Lose her shit. Well, I remember when I was. I think one of the first or second times I came and with Ezekiel to this house, they were like causing a ruckus. And I was like, how do you do it? She's like, I lose my shit 500 times a day. That's how I do it.
But the same, like, it's, you see on social media this like beauty of it all, right? You see the mom who gets up at 7 in the morning and is at the park by herself with her 2-3 kids, and then she's all dolled up, you know. And I would say to myself,
Starbucks in hand, the kids have all like aesthetically pleasing snacks and aesthetically pleasing containers,
and I would be like, dude, it's 9:00 and I haven't even brushed my teeth. Like,
the kids are still in pajamas.
Like, I can't go out to take them to the park because like my anxiety wouldn't let me. My anxiety, like,
your anxiety would tell you they're to the kids.
Yeah. Like, I got spiraled into the darkest parts of TikTok, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, I didn't leave the house for the longest time until my therapist was like, what happens when an emergency happens? And I'm like, well, I'm getting my kids and I'm going to the ER. What happens when they have doctor's appointments and your husband can't go? I take them. What happens when you go to the market? I take them.
And I think, like, around that time, it was also hard because my grandma, love her. But, you know, she'd be listening to the worst of the worst news. And she's like, ay, tengan cuidado cuando vayan al mercado porque hay un muchacho que está secuestrando a las mamás que tienen hijos y luego las viola y las mata.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, I'm not, like, hello, Instacart.
Yeah, so literally, that's when I was in my Instacart era. And so then, you know, Michael también, like, my mom, why don't you just walk around the block? And I'm like, are you kidding me?
By myself?
Like, did you not see this lady got her baby taken away in broad daylight? Like, not that far from where we live. Absolutely not. So I would do nothing by myself. It got so bad to the point where I think we've shown you guys our calendar, but at the beginning of the month, he tells me what days he's staying late, what days he has to cover, whatnot. And I would know of these days like a month in advance.
Days when she's talking about days, days where he's gonna be late.
So like when he's covering,
and they wouldn't get. He would not get home until the kids were in bed.
Yeah.
So she had to mom by herself
all day. So in my brain, I would have a month to freak out about what could go wrong. A month to find somebody to come stay with me. I think there was a point where I told Alyssa, like, he ended up having to stay one random day, like, for the week. And I'm like, Alyssa, please, I will pay you. Whatever you make at work for the day, I will pay you. I will buy you Starbucks, Dutch. I will Sheen, cart, whatever you got, I will buy you. Just stay with me, please. And she's like, I really, really cannot.
She had just gotten her new promotion.
Yeah, so it was like, I would dread it so bad. And I would be like, fuck, what do I do? to the point where I would be like, well, if it's a Friday, maybe my suegra can take them for the week, you know?
And she was totally fine with like the suegra taking them to the park. The suegra
Yeah.
taking them. Like it wasn't like, oh, no one could take them to the
It
park
was
by
just
themselves.
me by myself.
Like Michael could take them to the store by himself, but for some reason, like I could take them. Anyone could take them, but her,
It's like
absolutely
I just
not.
I don't, and even if like my mom or my grandparents were there, even though they weren't much help, because honestly, like if I'm getting kidnapped and I have my grandma, like what is she gonna,
Un bastonazo.
you know, like realistically, but
just
the
the thought.
thought would ease my brain of saying like, okay, she's here.
She can call 911.
You know, like something. But I don't know. It was just like, it took me a long, long time until my therapist was like, oh, what happens in an emergency? And I'm like, well, I just go. And she's like, okay, just start slow. You don't have to go take like a 5-mile walk, but down the block, you know. And yeah.
I'm not yawning because I'm bored. I'm just yawning because I'm tired. And yeah.
That's what I started doing. Like walking out, just playing in my front yard with the boys, like letting them roam. And then it was
play
like,
with chalk.
Okay, we survived, you know, and then walk a little bit until I was able to. And it's just like things that were normal to me that my therapist called me out on, and it was like, that's not normal behavior. Um, a big one was like, is still driving in the car while Michael's driving specifically.
Being the passenger princess.
I cannot.
She's not a passenger princess. With Michael.
Anyone else
any male,
be,
actually.
yeah, any male who's driving. I'm just like, I've literally done my Jalex nails and I've ripped them apart in a 30-minute drive because of how bad it gets. To the point where like, I hate when my mom and my grandma are like, ay, el carro, ay, put your brakes.
They're the worst fucking backseat drivers.
I hate when they do that to me. So I know as a driver, like, shut up, you want to drive? And yeah, it was always that. Like, Michael, slow down. Michael, you know, and he'd be
or like glancing over, how fast are they going?
Yeah, you know, and like, do you see the car? You see the car, right? There's a person, watch it, you know? And he'd be like, dude, do you want to drive? And I'd be like, actually, yeah, if you don't mind. Like, and again, like, I never thought it was
an issue. PTSD.
Until like my therapist was like, okay, well, what's going on in the car? And then I told her about it, and she's like, have you gotten into car accidents? And I'm like, yeah, but nothing like major. Like, it's never been a problem until I had the boys. And she's like, okay, well, let's kind of backtrack a little bit more. And so come to find out, PTSD, and I'm like, I thought therapy was supposed to help me, not make me like uncover like past traumas, you know?
But sometimes, I mean, and this past trauma had been stuck deep down until recently.
Yeah, it was kind of like that person who's kind of like, that chapter never existed in my life. And that's like not my pedo, because I appreciate it now that I know.
It's your, what is it? Your tan flag? Neutral flag?
Like, I love therapy and I advocate so much, but I'm just like, I thought I was going to go to one session and we were going to cover everything.
And then just going to be done.
And then it's like, okay, now this is how you cope with that. You know, but no, it's like, you take it day by day.
I mean, for some people, it is one and done. I've been going for fucking 7 years and I still go.
Yeah.
I still have Jeff on speed dial. When Ezekiel's in the emergency room, I text them and he's like, I'm here. You call me at midnight if you need to.
So it's just like that thing of like, I thought you're supposed to be helping me, but now you're making me uncover shit from my past that I thought
was not even relevant.
Like, but she was just like, no, you know, this happened because, you know, X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I think now I'm doing a lot better. Like, before, it would get to the point where I would bite off my like freshly.
And again, if I was driving, even if I was driving like a fucking maniac,
I would be like, you know, chill. But
my mom, who like is a more cautious driver and has to check everything.
It was only when Michael, and most of the time, it's like I'm either driving the kids by myself or with Michael, because you know, like, that's my life. And I knew it got bad when I would literally like dig my nails into my thighs just to like stop from saying something, because then that would lead to like a bicker, you know? I think it's just like advocating for yourself, but understanding that like therapy, it takes time.
And it looks different for everyone.
Yeah, and I think you just have to advocate because, like, my therapist, she left. So now I have to find another one. And it's like, for being my first one in a while, like, it was good. And now to have to, like...
Because you also, like, I think having a therapist, it's a very vulnerable relationship.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're one of the few people that you literally don't lie to about anything.
No.
You are your unfiltered self for what it is.
Yeah.
And after the first couple of them, and if you realize that you really like them, you don't feel judged, but you also don't feel like they don't take your side or the other side. They just support you as an individual. At least that's what my therapist does. I don't know about yours. So to like have to start over establishing that relationship and that comfort, it's intimidating.
Yeah, and I think for me a lot of it is like going in and like knowing, okay, these are the things that like brought me to therapy, but then it's just like the driving thing. Like you're not
prepared,
nervous or anxious about the driving because your kids are in the car. Like you're anxious and nervous about it because of like the incident that happened.
Yeah. That
like you thought you buried.
Or you didn't even realize was affecting you years later.
Or like I think one time she even asked me like if like why don't you talk to this person, and I'm like, oh, I just don't. And then she asked like, and what happens if they're not okay? And I was like, what do you mean? And like, oh, but what if they were hospitalized tomorrow? Like, would you go visit them? And I'm like, fuck, I never even thought about that. And she's like, okay, well, that's the session's gonna be today. And I'm like, no,
like,
talk
about that.
Let's talk about like the postpartum, kids. You know, like Diego's not sleeping, and then you know she kind of brings you back and kind of talks about different things.
I think that's also something that's a big misconception, not on purpose. It's not like you're naive, but incidents, whether you think they're traumatic in that moment or not, they shape who you are, and they indirectly impact decisions that we're making now as parents.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's certain things that I do or don't do because of experiences that I've had in the past. There's certain things that I am willing to accept and I'm willing to not accept and fight tooth and nail for in my relationship or around my child. There's certain people that are not allowed to be near my son for certain reasons. And it's, you know, thinking me that I'm like, you know, this hippie, trippy, new age, gentle parenting. No, it's because of shit that we've experienced in the past, people that we've encountered at different points of our lives. And we ultimately want better for our children. So we, you know, I've seen this thing on Instagram. I'm sure it's on TikTok too. It's like, my only goal as a mother is to build a childhood that my kid doesn't need to recover from, or some shit like that,
or like
that
the biggest therapy mom,
or whatever.
Like someone's childhood is in your hands.
That too.
Make it a good one.
Yeah. And like, do I want to lose my shit and yell at him? I mean, do I want to? Yes. Do I? I try really hard not to, and the best that I can do is try.
Because sometimes you have those days, you know, like
it's like just the day Ezekiel decided to spill a brand new container of olive oil on the floor and then swim in it after I had just given him a bath, and he was already in jammies drinking his bottle. How he got to that one cabinet and got the thing out, like I literally just laughed. I was like, I turned around and I saw him just on his belly doing like, you know, angelitos, and I was like, I could sit here and get upset and yell at you, or I can just laugh and go clean you up and then come and deal with this mess. Like,
yeah,
I did the latter. I didn't even yell at him. I was like, "Yo, God, come on, kid, let's go change you."
Yeah.
And he just looked at me and smiled. He was so proud of himself.
And you never know, like, that's always my big thing. Like, how do you know that that one time you lose grip of, like, that 5 seconds to reorganize your thoughts and your reaction to gentle parent and be able to talk to them and walk them through their emotions? Like, that one time I might lose my cool, maybe that one time or that one thing that they remember that'll fuck them up.
It's gonna be that
years later. And that's where,
I mean, that's what we're at, right? We're thinking we're fine, but that one instance is fucking you up in the car.
And it's like, this happened not that long ago. I was already 25, 4.
You're already
grown, you know? And
right? Yeah, you're already married.
And like those things still affect me. So now I can only imagine like that one time I lose my cool could be that one time that like messes these kids up forever.
In the future. Yeah.
And it's scary to think that way, but ultimately how you react, because even growing up, like we always had someone else taking care of us because mom was always working. And for me, that was always my coraje. Like I learned to get mad and yell and hit not from my mom, but from the people who took care of us. So my reaction to seeing something spill is like, "Ay, why did you do that?
Lionel,
what did you do to your brother?"
Michelle.
And I caught myself one day doing that. And I hated when my aunt would do that. When Alyssa would cry, "What did you guys do to her? Come here." And it was always
the first
like,
question.
"What did you do?" And I remember I would hear Diego cry and Lionel, "What did you do to your brother? We have to be nice." And then eventually I understood that like Diego was nowhere near him.
Yeah, it wasn't even him.
So it was like, fuck, I'm doing the thing I hated.
Because that's what you knew.
Because that's what I knew. And so again, it just took that kind of awakening, and also Michael calling me out and being like, "Hey, this is what you're doing." And knowing that like we're on a team, but two different people can parent differently, and you just have to
just communicate
how you want to do it, because it's hard. Raising little kids is so hard because you have 2 seconds to assess the situation, gather your thoughts, control
go through
your
all
feelings,
the different options and pick one and do it.
And then do what you think is best in that moment. And sometimes it is yelling, and sometimes it is losing your shit, but I think you have to just calmly at the end of it just be like, "Hey, I lost my shit. I'm sorry. I love you."
This is going to be a very long episode. We might need to split it up into part 1 and part 2 because I just looked at the time and we're already hitting an hour. But there's just a lot. I mean, man, we can go on and on. I could go on and on and on and on and on about mental health, trauma response, trying your best to gentle parent. And that's kind of what this is, right? Yeah. This podcast is our outlet. I think that's also why this podcast was born.
Yeah.
To not only put it out there for you guys, but to put it out there for us and just talk about these hard feelings and hard thoughts and hard emotions. Like, we tried to film this when I was here last month, and the incident with the vehicle and the male being the vehicle, for me, that was a light bulb moment because I'm like, holy fuck, like when Omar's driving, I'm constantly like, oh, he's speeding. Oh, he's speeding. Oh, he's speeding. And for a long time, I was the backseat passenger princess because Ezekiel, my anxiety of him dying or unable to breathe and turning blue and being dead in his car seat was very high. So whenever we were in the car together, I was always in the back, watching him breathe, literally just watching that belly go up and down. So I would find myself kind of like you, like in the back of, in my back seat of my car with my hand, like a fucking señora, like holding on to the thing, trying to brake. There's no fucking brake on my side.
Michael would always tell me, like, "What are you stiff up for? Like, you can't stop the car." And I'm like, "Well, I feel like I'm doing something."
Yeah, or like
stop paying attention to me.
Gripping the car seat, and when you mentioned that last attempt whatever filming this, I was like, holy shit. And I wasn't even there. I experienced that telephonic, like on the phone, that incident, because Michael had called me and then you had called me, and it was like fucking 6 o'clock in the morning. So I wasn't even physically there or in the vehicle or out of the vehicle or seeing the vehicle speed off.
So chinga su madre, because I've been filming this and not saying it, but fuck you and these feelings.
Anyway.
Take you back to 2020 to paint a picture for you. It is 5:30 in the morning. My parents show up to my house. At the time, Alyssa, my younger sister, was living with us.
I was
way up
there.
Minding her business, sleeping in on a beautiful Saturday morning. And my parents were just going through the chaos of separation. And my dad just calls and he's like, "Come outside." So I'm like, "Okay, Alyssa, come on, let's go to the car." And we're just in my dad's car and he's like, facing us in the back seat and just yelling, with his hands and blah, blah, blah. And Alyssa, being Alyssa, just is taking all this negativeness in, and she starts having a panic attack.
And Alyssa was also going through it.
Yeah, because it's like,
hence she was living with Michonne.
Yeah. So she has a panic attack, is like freaking out because it's like all brand new to her. He's all up in her face. And I'm trying to like calm down, calm everybody down because, again, I'm kind of like the peacemaker / like telephone here, making sure that like Julie's in the loop and everyone is okay. But like,
well, then I also have my cuñado calling me like, I don't know what is going on outside my house. I just see.
And yeah, so Alyssa, like, como pudo, gets out of the car, and I'm just like, fuck, like, what do? I can't leave my mom here because he's all alterado and crazy. Like, God knows what stupidity he could do. And then I have my sister on the verge of, like, passing out, and I'm just like, fuck. So I pick, I'm like, well, if mom can jump out the car if she has to. I go run after Alyssa, and then the same, like, I'm trying to calm her down, making sure that she's okay. Like, do I have to call the ambulance? Like, are you good? And then I just see my mom or my dad, like, speed off. And, like, where we used to live were very little streets. Like, there was no long shot road. Like everything.
She lived 2 houses in, and then there was a road, and then and then another road, and then like there were all stop signs.
So you couldn't just
like track homes. It's all little itty bitty to kind of weave to get to the freaking. It wasn't even the freeway; it's the fucking highway. Like what 2-road lane.
So I just remember like hearing hasta las llantas, like even that fucking shivers down my back. Just hearing the like tires out of the
going down.
Hearing the tires screech and then leave. And so in my brain, I'm like, fuck my mom. He's driving like a fucking maniac. Next thing you know, he's just gonna fucking crash somewhere and take both their lives. Like, mom, if you're smart enough, just jump, like get out how you can. Then I have Alyssa over here on the floor, like panic attack. How are you? Like, are you good?
Hyperventilating. It was bad.
Yeah, like not being able to.
And I'm just hearing everything through. No, not even FaceTime. It was just regular. I was like,
and so I'm like, you get mom, like find my friends and make sure that like they're moving, that at least their little thing is moving. And I'm like trying to calm Alyssa the best I could, and then
I'm trying to like contact CHP, and I'm like, fuck, I don't even remember the license plate.
Do you guys know
what call? I don't even like. It was just your mind goes blank when an emergency like that, because it was just like, okay, she has Alyssa, Michael has her, but who has my mom? And it was a matter of like, well, what kind of car it is? I'm like,
I don't remember. Like,
he just got a new car.
It's like, blue.
Okay. I was like, it's either blue or it's black. What's the maker model? I think it's a Nissan, but it might be a Toyota. And CHP's like, they're trying to figure out like what bolo do we need to put out, but we can't even explain what the car looks like, because in that moment it's like
the same. I think it goes back to like that mom thing. Like, yeah, I know my mom is in danger. I feel like she's in danger. Julie's trying to help, but then in front of me, I'm seeing Alyssa like literally like
hyperventilating.
Like, what do I do? Do I try to stop and think about his stupid car, or do I try to save her? Like, and the same, it was kind of like 50-50. Well, chinga su madre, like my mom can jump out of the car. And honestly, like after Alyssa calmed down and we were like, my mom's fine, like they stopped, like, yeah.
And then my mom finally answered the phone, because she wasn't answering the phone.
Like straight to voicemail. And I'm like, oh my God. So Julie, after everything, we're like, he got to their destination beyond faster than
any
he should have.
Right person in our mind.
But after that, it was like anytime I would hear a tire screech, anytime I would see a male driving, like PTSD would take me back to that moment of like not having control, because it wasn't a sense of like we're gonna crash and the babies or whatever. Like it's never was thing. That it was like, I'm not driving, I can't know if Michael is paying attention to everything that I would pay attention to. So
Michael's a very safe driver.
He's had less accidents than I. Like,
he's a very safe driver.
Like they hit him in the parking lot, Like
he's very cautious.
So never ever has he ever like driven crazy to make me think that. But PTSD. And I was so frustrated with my therapist after she like brought that up.
And then she brought that up, and I'm like, oh,
fuck, you know. And then it was like,
sense.
I told her, and then she was like, that makes sense. And I'm like, fuck, now I'm like mess you up, and like,
don't worry about it.
You know, so it's like things like that where I was like, I thought I had buried that so deep in the past, and now it's like, okay, I think it's important to talk about it. But even when like she would bring up, you know, like your parents, like, do you want to talk about them? I'd be like, please, no. Like, fuck, I'm over it. Like, you know, like I don't have that.
But I think one of the differences, totally by not accident, by choice. I was going to therapy pre-shit hitting the fan.
Yeah.
Because my personal life, aside from my family unit, was already hitting the fan. Mm-hmm. So I started therapy well before shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
So not to say that it was easier for me to bring up these things, but I had already talked through and found a way to work through things, mm-hmm. which included not speaking to our father for a very long time. You know, it was like there was just I felt no need, no desire, no nothing. But you know, it is what it is. That's just that's what we have to deal with. And I think now as parents, we look at that situation totally different.
Yeah.
Right? Because why would you do that to your children?
Yeah.
And why would you make those choices knowing that you're hurting your children?
Yeah.
Why would you? We were grown. I mean, we were all in our 20s.
Yes. I think that's what kind of hits home is that, like, not to say, like, our home unit was good, but family-wise, like, they were all scumbags. I'm sorry if you guys are my cousins and hearing this, but, like, the men in our family,
they're piece of shit.
They were. And, like, I always grew up in that with the back of my head. Like, you're going to find someone and they're going to cheat on you and they're going to leave you single.
Or they're going to be an alcoholic.
Yeah, like, something's going to be wrong with them.
X, Y, and Z. So that's also kind of why, like, at least between us, it was always like, the only person that has you besides you is me.
Yeah.
Like, there's been times where, I mean, honestly, let's put it out there. When everything was hitting the fan, she'd be like, hey, can I borrow $100 to pay my car? She's like, I don't want to ask Michael for it or whatever. Like, before you guys had to keep it. And I was like, dude, here's $300. Pay me whenever you need to. Like, no rush. She's like, I'll get paid. Like, no. Or she'll be like, bro, like, you know, shit over here is also hitting the fan, and I don't talk to that person. Can I borrow $300 to make my mortgage?
Yeah.
Yep. You know, here's your $300. I was like, I'll pay you. No, pay me back whenever you can. So we didn't, like, besides each other, now it's a little different because we have good men in our lives that, you know, help in all aspects. But for a while, it was like the only person that's got you is you and me.
Yeah.
Like, and Alyssa, well, she was going through it, so we didn't want to involve her in, like, our little drama because she was going through it big. So it was always like, dude, can I borrow, like, I booked a flight to go to LA, but they withdrew the mortgage early. Mm-hmm. Can I just borrow $100 so I have money to spend down there? And she's like, girl, I'll give it to you when I pick you up at the airport or whatever it was.
Just being like,
and it's like, like she said, all of the men either have been, were, or are scumbags at different levels.
Yeah.
They cheat, they steal, they hit, they emotionally abuse, they verbally abuse, they financially abuse people.
Yeah.
So it's also very hard, I think, at least for me, to have a healthy relationship with a man in certain aspects. Even with Omar, like, so I wasn't working for a while because Ezekiel was sick. I just went back to work last week, right? And like, there was times where I didn't get a check, right? Because leave wasn't being approved, finance, you know. So, and I'm not used to having someone else pay for my shit.
Yeah.
So it was really hard. Sometimes I'd be like, oh, just take it out of the account. And I'm like, no. Like,
that's not my money.
I don't want you to pay for my car. He's like, yeah, babe, but that's the car that gets my child to doctor's appointments. That's the car that gets us around as a family. Like, or the first time he had to pay my mortgage, I was like, absolutely not, you're not paying my mortgage, right? But it's hard to be like, hey, Michelle, can I borrow $1,000? Because it's she has to talk to Michael about, which makes total sense, right? She just can't be like, yep, here you go. So I was like stressing out, and I had already borrowed money from my mom, and I was like, oh my God. And he's like, how much do you owe your mom? I was like, well, I borrowed money for her last month for mortgage. And he's like, why didn't you tell me? And I'm like, because you're a dude. Like, I don't want you to have to rely on you. You know, it sounds bad. But, like, and I remember there was times where, like, after one of those are, like, breakdowns of me telling him, like, I just don't know how to trust a man in all aspects because every man I have ever loved has hurt me in some way.
Yeah.
Right? So my walls are fucking sky high. And you can't knock on them. You can't bulldoze through them. They're just there.
They're there.
So, like, I remember, like, I was a hot ass mess. Ezekiel was sleeping in his crib, and I took a shower, and I came out, and I was like crying in the shower, and Omar was in the living room, and he comes into the bedroom, right, and I'm like, you know, just going through it, and he looks at me, and he's like, when I say I'm not leaving, like, yeah, we can argue and bicker, and you can think, you know, that's all you know, perfect. Just kidding. I haven't been perfect all this time, right? I have all these closets in my skeleton. He goes, but I can tell you one thing, like, when I say I'm not leaving, like, I am not leaving.
Yeah.
He's like, no matter how much, you know, we may bicker or argue or whatever, like, I'm not leaving. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. You know, but it's just that trauma that, so then a lot of our arguments were also about time with the baby, right? We have a construction company. It requires time. You probably go through it a little bit too with him being in school, right? Like, you need to give them time. You need to spend time. They don't feel good. Come cuddle with them. And that was the biggest thing for me at the beginning, because sorry if you're listening, Tony, but the first affair that I caught, right? I remember you and Alyssa were super sick, and he had to go to a real estate, whatever the fuck. Come to find out, he was with one of his mistresses that trip. And I found out when I saw the pictures on a camera in his truck. And I was like, this is in convention. Mm-hmm. So ever since then, it's like the fact that that mistress was more important than my 6 sisters at home. When you guys were begging him, like, please don't go, we don't feel good. And he opted to still leave. Like, that was hard. Yeah. So now, like, I remember I would be like, well, you just want to go to, like, how do I know you're really going to work? Ezekiel doesn't feel good. I don't feel good. Like, we want you to be home. He'd be there, like, doing paperwork or on the phone with clients, emailing and stuff. But in my mind, it was like, he's sick and you are avoiding time with us. Why? What is more important than your sick child? Yeah. And that was, like, not when Ezekiel was hospitalized. I will say not ER visits. When it's been serious, he's been there. It was like, I think he was like having colicos like at 2 or 3 weeks old. Yeah. You know, but as it is, you don't feel comfortable in your own body. You're like, why? And we weren't living together at the time. So I was like, how do I know that you're not going? And he's not. Like, he's not. But those are the thoughts. That trauma is still there. And then that would impact how I treated Ezekiel and how I felt about myself. Because then I was like, well, fuck him then. If he's gonna go out and do whatever the fuck he wants, then I got you, baby. Like, yeah. I got you like no one else got you. Mm-hmm. So it's just, it's really interesting to see how those experiences have shaped us. And like my biggest thing too, and I tell Omar all the time, is my goal is to not raise a scumbag. Yeah. Like, I want him to be reliable. I want him to be committed. I want him to be respectful. Mm-hmm. I also saw this thing on Instagram and I was like, holy shit, light bulb. It's like, I don't know the handle, but it's like, you know, when I'm raising a son, so I need to make sure that when I raise this son, I raise him to acknowledge all aspects of a woman, not to be disgusted by periods, not to be disgusted by birth. You know, like, why would he be disgusted about that if that's normal? Mm-hmm. You know? So, like, Omar's gone to the store plenty of times to get me pads. Like when I first came home from the hospital, right? He's like, no, I'll go. And even that was kind of weird for you, huh? Because you're like, what do you mean you're going to go get her medication and always discreet? Because I was bleeding through them like crazy. And even, I think you guys were even like, no, it's okay. And my mom's like, no, mijo, I'll go. And he gets like, I got it. Like, and he came, sure enough, he came, he's like, okay, I got you these pads, I got you these underwear, here's your medication. And it's just weird to even have him go to the pharmacy, even though he's my partner. It was it was weird because it's just different. And I think we're reaching an hour and 15 minutes, so that's going to be it for part 1. We're going to have to film part 2 later because these kids are banging literally on the door.
Get out the room.
Yeah. Small business shout out to come at the end of part 2.